Single parenting isn't easy. We understand. Most parents don't plan to go it alone, but you can still make the most of this journey for your children and yourself. In fact, if you and your family are on that journey, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Single Parent Advocate community and to our podcast. And here are your hosts, single parent founder Stacy Poitras, and broadcast journalist, single dad and friend, Daryl Moody.
Welcome back to Single Parent Advocate Podcast. Thanks for joining us. I am Daryl Moody, joined once again by the Single Parent Advocate, Stacy Poitras. Stacy, thank you for joining us again. And we've got a special guest this week. We're joined by Noelle Federico. She is the CEO of Fortunato Partners. It's a communications and consulting firm. You may also know her as the Single Working Mom. She's the brainchild behind that brand. Noelle, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off by talking about Single Parent Day, which was this past weekend. Stacy, tell us about all the things that you had going on there.
It was awesome. We had about 50 families gather here in the North Texas area. We had a special speaker come, and we talked about vision boarding and the importance of, make your plans. The old saying is, plan to fail or fail to plan, right? Or
Sure.
might go the other way around. I don't know. I kind of get that backwards all the time, but that's why I need a vision board, right?
Exactly.
Anyway, we also honored some of our key volunteers who have been contributors because we just crossed the 10-year line going into COVID. And so we didn't ever get to have our 10-year anniversary. So this year we're pretending like we're 10 years old, even though we're 11. And I got to honor some of the pillars of the organization. And I'm just super proud to still be going. I know very many nonprofits don't make it this far when they're in their infancy. And I'm super grateful to be here with you and with all of the single parent community, and especially Miss Noelle.
Well, tell us a little about what you do. Tell us about the Working Single Mom, that project, and then we can talk about your day job too.
Okay. So the workingsingle.mom.com and the companion social media platforms were founded in 2014 by me. So we've been at this, 6 years now, I guess. We have over 1 million followers now in our community. We have an active blog where I have bloggers, putting up fresh stuff every day. And we're really about possibility, teaching that people that possibility exists. That's really my motto, is anything is possible, I think, is one of our taglines, actually. And I founded it because I thought that it was really kind of my public name is kind of what, I just invented this brand because I just figured, hey, we might as well try to inspire people. And so I just started posting stuff on a Facebook page, and I bought the domain name, and here we are 6 years later, and we're kind of like this movement, and we're a whole thing. And I've written a couple of books now, and this is my give back. So, what I'm really striving to do is to show people, as I said, that possibility exists, that you very much have control over your own reality and what you're creating for yourself. And to Stacy's point, things like vision board, things like affirmations, things like controlling your thought processes and responding and not reacting, core prosperity principles. I've been studying prosperity principles and success principles since I was 12 years old. My mom was a prosperity teacher and a life coach before she passed away this summer. She was kind of the original inspiration for a working single mom. She was a working single mom. I was, until my son was 19. He's going to be 20 this year. I got married again in 2019. But I did run the whole 18 years with, nobody living with us and nobody supporting us. I didn't take child support, et cetera, et cetera. So I can very much speak to what that feels like, what those challenges are, being in the middle of that, some days feeling like, how are you going to do this? And you can't possibly go on. And what I did was I took the principles that I had been studying my whole life and I applied them. And I've applied them the entire length of my son's life. And, I managed to achieve incredible results. I filed bankruptcy when he was almost 1. and came back from that and a whole bunch of other things by applying exactly what I'm out there teaching and talking about. So that's kind of the history behind the Working Single Mom, where I don't make money off the brand. I finance it myself. It's my give back. That's pretty much my story with that. So we're just out there trying to help people to get inspired and to keep going. And just keep doing the next thing in front of you and keep your attitude up, because our emotional set point is our point of attraction. So the more that we can encourage people to go to the next highest emotional state, the better off their results are going to be. And that's what we've actually been focusing a lot on, that in our live shows over the last, probably since November. I've been really hitting that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Well, tell us about your story. 18 years. What were some of the challenges along the way? Do you have any examples of where you were able to apply those principles and kind of overcome a challenge?
So many.
Cherry pick the best ones.
I would say that what I find, financial challenges are huge for single parents, at least, from what I've seen. That is often and sometimes always the sticking point, whether it's, you don't have enough because you're not getting supported by, either the other parent, or you're trying to hold down a job and care for the child for the majority. There's needs and requirements for the child, and it's a never ending pit. And I'm here to tell you it still is, because the kid's going to be 20 and it's still a never ending pit. But, eventually they catch their own. But when they're small, financial challenges are huge. And there's nothing that it can instill fear, I believe, in a working single mom or even a working single dad, like, oh my God, how am I going to feed the kid? How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to make the car payment? How am I going to, pay for camp? How am I going to take us on vacation? Whatever the case may be. In a lot of cases, it's very survival based needs, like food and rent and those kinds of things. If you're blessed enough to be worried about summer camp, that's like a whole nother level. But the majority of my audience seems to be, in this space where it's about paying the bills, and it's about, putting food on the table. And I think what people don't recognize and realize is that when you are worried about something and then you focus on that, you start spiraling, and then you start doing the what if scenario, and then now you've got yourself into a panic. And there's nothing like fear to instill that, like, oh my God, I can't breathe, I can't function, I can't, that's fear of not enough money is the kind of stuff that chokes people out, right? And they have no ability to respond, because now they're just a huge reaction based on the financial stuff. And I can speak to that two different times in my circumstance of the 18 years of Antonio's growing up. Once when I filed bankruptcy, which was because my grandfather had gone into the hospital and had been brought home with hospice. And it was before I was pregnant with Antonio, but I quit my jobs to help take care of him, and then ended up getting pregnant. I was married at the time, but I had a lot of bills that, I wasn't able to catch up with. And my husband at the time wasn't interested in getting a second job to help me do that. His solution was that I should just file bankruptcy because that was easy. And I remember crying all the way to bankruptcy court and sitting in there with, some pretty interesting folks, and just feeling like the lowest piece of garbage that you can imagine, because that's not how I was raised. I wasn't brought up to not pay my bills, and I was embarrassed, and I was afraid, and I was I just felt I felt dirty. I felt icky. I cried all the way home. And over the course of, I watched them tow my car away because they repopped it, as part of the bankruptcy. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, like, all right,
it's all good from here, right?
Well, I just thought, I've got this kid, right? And I come from kind of this dysfunctional family, and now I like married this guy, and he's kind of a interesting piece of work, and this isn't really where I want to be. And now I'm broke as shit. And, what am I going to do about it? And I had, as I said, I'd been studying principles since I was 12, but hadn't really had the kind of when the rubber meets the road moment, hadn't really needed to. And I turned to my affirmations, and I turned to things like a vision board, an image book. I really was watching what I was saying about what was happening, how I was languaging that, the story that I was telling about it. And I just made a decision. I just thought, you know what? I'm not doing this. My kid is not gonna, this isn't how it's gonna roll. And I told my husband to get out shortly after that. And I just said, I don't want money. I don't want anything from you. You're welcome to see your son whenever you want, but I'm not doing this. And I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm not doing this. And just as I was able to elevate my thinking, and as I was able to control where my mind was going and how I was languaging to other people, and I'm not a complainer really by nature, so I was really kind of watching that, and I wasn't going around saying, oh, poor me, oh my God, I'm bankrupt, blah blah blah. I just started talking about what I wanted more of instead of kind of what it looked like in the moment. And that's one of the things that I'm always telling people, like, you can be sitting in a pile of mud, but the more you talk about the mud that you're sitting in, the worse it's going to get. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
just start speaking. You almost look like a fool in the beginning because you start speaking about how you want things to be instead of what it looks like in this particular moment. And I don't think
I
No,
got excited about you saying that, Noelle, because what you focus on grows, right?
Right.
And whether it's a plant, a child, a job, your strength, your physical strength. A lot of people don't even focus on, just taking walks and self-care. I really, really love what you're saying. Please don't let me stop you.
To your point, you and I couldn't, the three of us on this podcast, we couldn't stress that to the people listening enough, that what you focus on grows. It's exactly what Stacey is saying. Whatever you're putting your attention on becomes your attraction point, right? So, and the law of attraction is simple. The law of attraction doesn't know words. The law of attraction only knows energy. And energy is either worry, or it's celebration, but that's, the universe only knows the energy that you're directing. It doesn't know the difference between, oh, I'm worried about this, so I don't really want that, or I want it to be this way, so I want that. All the universe feels is the energy that you're putting on it, and then it returns it to you. So this is why we couldn't possibly stress enough for people not to let themselves go into that fear, worry, despair, panic, because all you're really doing is perpetuating that. And we recognize that when you're in fear, despair, worry, and panic, we're not going to get you to joy, euphoria, and, but we might get you to worry. From panic to worry is actually elevated, or
Sure.
even from anger, from panic to anger is even better, so at least we could get you maybe to think the next best thing, and then you'll slowly start to elevate yourself. So in regards to the, financial disarray stuff and working myself through that. So that was the one thing in 2001 with the bankruptcy. And then I think it's been about 4 years ago now. For 14 years, I was the CFO and business manager for the global stock photography company, dreamstime.com. And I was a founding member of that team. And then it became apparent to me that one of the reasons was my mom was not well, and I wanted to focus more on that. But the other was I wanted to do more of my own thing. I had my own corporation since 2007. So I was always doing, kind of side stuff. But I stepped down from that position after being with them for 14 years because I just wanted to focus on other stuff. And I stepped down without a parachute and without a net. And I left myself I just jumped off the cliff, and I just prayed that the net would be underneath me. And I have to say that was even more of a when a rubber meets the road moment, because I had gotten myself used to a particular level of manifesting. And then I jumped off the cliff, and I didn't have didn't have the way, I didn't have the backup finances to keep myself, I had kind of a plan, but it was one of those, God told me what I needed to do and I just did it. And I didn't really know how it was all going to turn out. And what I ended up turning to again was what I teach. And there were days when I literally had an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with affirmations on it. And I walked around this house repeating them over and over and over and over again, just to get my mind to shut up, because my mind was telling me like, oh my God, you're going to lose your house. You fool. What have you done? You're insane. How are you going to, and I would drive Antonio to school and I would come home and I would come upstairs and I would fall to my knees and I would weep. And this is only 4 years ago. And I just trusted what I teach. And it was a different level of doing that, as I'm saying, than back in 2001, because I had elevated myself to a particular point. And then I again just jumped off in faith based on what I wanted to see create itself for me. And part of that was because I wanted to be in charge of my own work. I wanted to say what I wanted to work on and what I didn't want to work on. And I love the people that I worked with for all that time. They're amazing folks. It wasn't anything, it was nothing like that. It was just a personal, it's been 14 years and I just want to do it my own way.
Sometimes you want more.
Yeah. And so it was that first year, I had no idea where the money would come from. And it came. Every month I had enough. And some months I had just enough. And there were times when I had $5 in my bank account. And if you looked at what I live in and where I am, you'd think, oh, she's, people look me up on the internet and they're like, oh, it's like, no, you have no idea. So it was, yeah. So what it did though, was it schooled me again, like almost 18 years later, in what that feels like. So that when I am teaching and talking, like, as you can see, it's emotional for me still, like that's very freaking real to me still, because I was scared. And I've been practicing, I'm going to be 53. So I've been practicing these principles for almost 4 decades. And I think people think that, oh, I'll read the Secret or I'll study this book and then everything's going to be, whatever. And it's like, I don't think people understand that it's a practice to get your life from what it looks like to what you want it to look like, and to hold that and to keep it consistent. That's a practice. Like, I literally do affirmations and do prayer work an hour every morning. No kidding. That's how I start my day. That's no joke. And I still do that. And I do it when things look great. And I do it when things look not so great. But that's really what holds me. And so I proved again to myself that by practicing all these tools that I talk about, you can generate a whole new reality. And that over the last 4 years is what I have done. And it's been, there have been some scary points when during that first year, I sold everything I could on eBay, everything that was in this house that I didn't absolutely need, I sold it. I sold all the jewelry I had. I sold pocketbooks. I sold everything I could think of just to, I had some consulting gigs and I had a little of this and a little of that. And it was like 5,000 here, a couple things, this, that. But there was never a time in that first year where I went, oh, it's all handled because this is coming in on a steady basis. It didn't get like that until a year ago, where I actually had a thing where I can say, okay, that's the baseline. And anything over that, we're good, we're golden, whatever. So, yeah. So those are 2 times that I can give you as real examples where, I took what I teach and I put it to work. And I can still get to where when someone comes to me and says, Noelle, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent, or how, what do I do? I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. What I try to do is teach them how to control. All you can control is this.
Sure.
There's a numerous amounts of people that can help people find jobs or figure things out, but there's not a lot of people that can help people get a hold of themselves in their head and focus and direct so that you can change a reality. That is something I think that you're able to do when you've been through it yourself, because you know how to speak to that fear and that panic. You know, lots of times there are people out there speaking these things, but they don't really know what that feels like to be a single parent and be, you know, locking yourself in the bathroom after your kid goes to bed, weeping on the floor because you have no effing idea what you're doing, or you think you did it wrong, or you think you don't have enough money, or you think you possibly cannot possibly do it another day. And, you know, and I know what that feels like because I've been there, done that, and I've walked out the other side of it many times. So I feel like I bring that to the table. I bring that authenticity to the table. That's one of the things that people like about me, is I'm very authentic. I don't tell you that it's easy. I don't tell you that it's going to happen overnight. You absolutely can change your life, and it's work, and you have to be willing to do the work. And if you're willing to do the work, you can change any circumstance, period, end of the story. If you're not willing to do the work, and I'll tell people, if you want the easy button, you should shut me off, you should get off my Facebook page, and you should never come back here again, because I'm not your girl.
Right.
So
Right.
Well, and I think, you know, the words that I keep hearing resonate is, you know, bouncing back from broken is not going to be like this smooth path, but just because you've been, you know, going through what you consider broken, and everybody's version of broken is different, right?
right.
And you know, just trying to remember, you know, you know, there's going to be days, even if you get on the path of affirmations and gratitudes and, you know, spending time with yourself, there's going to be mornings where you don't get that hour, right? And, you know, I'd love to say, yeah, you know, I spend an hour every morning, but I found myself feeling guilty for not spending that time, or feeling like, oh my gosh, did I just ruin my day because I didn't do all of my gratitudes and my affirmations because I had to take the dogs to the vet before I had to go, you know, and I'm starting my own advertising business now, you know. And so there's days when you kind of have that energy, like you're saying, but it's not, you don't have the time in practical ways to practice it tangibly. And I'd love to hear you speak to that, you know, like on the days, like what do you tell yourself if all of a sudden you don't get your gratitudes done? Or like, how do you manage that? Because I bet many single parents, especially after the pandemic, are going to end up working for themselves. Like
right.
you did. And
So
yeah, go ahead.
I learned that, number one, I used to hear words like self-care, and I would like be, what is that? Who has time for that? That's like, nobody has time for that. What are they talking about? That's airy fairy. That's a bunch of BS. Nobody has time for self-care. I have to keep paying the bills. What are you talking about? And then, you know, my mom passed away from not taking care of herself. So that was this summer. She passed away at 75. And that was a rude awakening, because she was like, I'm just like her in a lot of ways. And she would just go and go and go and go. So I had a real reality check about the self-care thing. And I really started speaking to that, to my audience, through that. And then after that, because I will say this, you might not get an hour, but you have to make sure that you get something. And if it's 5 minutes or 10, like, you have to put in boundaries, because here's what happens. If you don't, and you fall, nobody, you know what I'm saying? Like, single parents are holding so much, and we think, oh, I can't take 10 minutes because I have to take the dogs to the vet, or I have to do this, or I have to get the kid, or I have to. And what I'm saying, and what I have learned now, is that if you do not take that time, if you do not create that boundary, however you can make it work, if it's 10 minutes, if you can't get it in the morning, try to get it during the day, you know, but to have that time for yourself where you can just kind of like recalibrate yourself and focus on what you want to see yourself create. Because if you don't do that, you are at effect of your day rather than you being in control of your day. So this is really an important skill, and it's one worth like trying to help people figure out how to make it happen. Because to your point, as moms, for sure, and probably with Daryl as a dad too, as a single dad, we're the last that we're the last consideration, right? It's all about, whatever needs to be done. And what I'm learning at 50, almost 53, is that we really need to be the first consideration in a way. And I understand if we have small children, obviously that's the first consideration and all of that. But like, if you don't take that space for yourself, however you can get it and whatever it looks like for you, you are just going to end up running on empty. You're just going to end up reacting to everything that's coming at you instead of being able to respond. Because when you lose your peace, or you don't have time to just frame that for yourself in some way, whatever works, then you are, things are coming at you, checkbook balances, calls from the school, whatever's happening. And you're like a ping pong ball now. You're just like, and you kind of lose that. When you are able to get yourself reset and come from some kind of a grounded place of peace, you can respond to things and you can recognize like, oh, this is a circumstance that's happening. But if I lose my shit right now and react to this, then I'm going to lose all my power. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let me take a moment. Let me just take a breath, and then let me see what my best course of action is. And, instead of being very emotional and ping ponging and reacting. And when we don't get some time to recalibrate, and to Stacy's point, maybe it isn't every day. Maybe you can't make it happen every day, or maybe you can only make it happen 5 minutes before you go to bed. Or maybe you even need to get up 10 minutes earlier so that you can get that 10 minutes for yourself. But it's worth it, because it just gives you a place of wholeness to come from. And then you can be responding to, the stimuli that are coming at you instead of reacting to that. Because when we are a reaction, we lose all of our power. And, and then we're sort of at effect of whatever life is throwing at us, right? Because then we tend to spiral. When we lose our power, we get reactivated about the checkbook balance, or the call from the school, or the spouse that's acting up, or whatever. And now we're just, now it's a hot mess, because there's no lines and there's no course of action. There's only us, like all upset and emotional. And then we're vibing, coming from that emotional set point. So we're attracting more of it, and it just kind of snowballs. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope
it totally did. It did, because, what you do so well and is you break it down into, or break your communication down so well about, okay, these are the different, dynamics and pieces. The thing that I always tell myself and really communicate with the families that I've been able to work with and get to know is that you have to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. Whether you're a single mom, single dad, professional, and really even the children of single parents. There's a lot of children of single parents that really contribute to the home, and understanding that they can take care of themselves so that they can contribute around the house and still do their homework and still, be part of what the whole family is manifesting, if you will, because I'm a fan of the kiddos that are in these homes, because they're strong, very, very strong and resilient. And so I don't know, Daryl, what do you have? You're a single dad.
I kind of want to dive into this. Noelle, what do you do for self-care? I mean, given your limited time, you're a career woman with a lot going on. What are some suggestions for things that we could do to kind of, recenter our chi, so to speak?
I've discovered that yoga is instrumental. So even just 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So one of the things is I've discovered that kind of morning practice, which now I get to have an hour, but like when Antonio was in school and stuff, it was more like 30 minutes. So but I had to get up earlier, right? So, he didn't have to get up till 6. So for school, so I got up at 5. And, it was kind of a pain in the ass to get up at 5, but I did it because I didn't get my time if I didn't do it. Yep. And as I've gotten older, and I now have the luxury of, like, I turned his bedroom when he moved out into a sitting room for myself, and furnished it with, like, this is where I'm sitting now, with like all this nice bright and I come in here when I get up and I do, my affirmations, and I do, I check the social media platforms and do a few stories on there. And I kind of just have my own time. And so yoga, I have found to be great. Number one, because you're stretching. Number two, I had my Reiki practitioner recently, when we were during this launch phase, to which I was working like 7 days a week, like a crazy person. She told me, "You're not breathing." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm alive. Clearly I'm still breathing." And she's like, "No, you're breathing like from here, up. You're not like deep. You're not taking deep breaths." And I'm like,
breathing with your
"What?"
diaphragm.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then I was like, okay, well, I mean, let me just look at that. And then I realized, like, was I? No, not really. So now I consciously like will sit and I'll just take a few deep breaths, and
Sure.
it actually works. So there's something to be said for that. For me, it's a cup of coffee and just like sometimes just even looking out the window for 5 minutes, not having a device in my hand and not having someone chattering at me. I know for some people they read, there's like daily, positive devotionals. I think those take like maybe 5 minutes to read a little segment or something. For some people, I know it's a gratitude. I do take a couple of personal life coaching clients still by request. And one of the things I always tell them is a Darren Hardy recommendation, actually, which is bookend your days. So, have a little bit of time at the beginning of the day where you're to what we're talking about, kind of your set point, and then a little bit of time at the end of the day where you're kind of evaluating like what happened and writing some gratitudes, about what you're grateful for. My mom used to tell her students, to keep a gratitude journal and just write 5 things every night that you're grateful for. It's not hard to come up with 5 things. Again, the biggest part of this is just making it a practice and making it consistent. So it could be, going and having a facial. For Daryl, it could be playing golf. It could be, having a massage. It could be getting your, nails done if you're, whatever, or going out with your friends to Target for 30 minutes or an hour, or, granted, life's not very normal now with the outings, but or going outside and just sitting outside and doing nothing for 5 or 10 minutes, just to give yourself a break, to be away from stimulus.
I always like to go out in the patio and garden. I have like all these
Yeah,
potted
me too.
plants.
I'm
And
with Stacy on that. That's one of my things. And you pegged me playing golf. That's my treat for myself. But
There you
we
go.
could talk about going outside and gardening for sure.
yeah, one day I got real stressed. I'm working from home now, and so I running my ad agency and then kind of flipping, and always being present as much as possible, like you're talking about, online for everyone and with everyone. I always say with everyone because I know we really are a community, all of us, single parents as a whole, and all of those who are just trying to be a light to each other and then to the population and the kiddos. Anyway, so I think unplugging for me, I wrote down, taking 5-minute breaks is so important, just setting, I'll say, hey, Siri, set my alarm for such and such. And, I have an Apple phone. And so she'll remind me, when it's time to take my 5-minute break. I even found 5-minute yoga, believe it or not, in
Wow,
Audible.
that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. And so if I don't have time, I had a big back surgery a couple of years ago. And so it's so important to stretch. And so I make myself stretch. And then this is another thing that I wanted to share. My doctor told me, you have to blink more. You need to breathe more, yes, but you have to blink. You have to close your eyes and go 1001, 1002, and then open your eyes. And that moisturizes your eyes and keeps them from turning bright red or getting so irritated if you're at the computer, a long time. And I was like, all of these details, we thought it was so cool to ignore. Even just 2 years ago,
Right?
It's crazy. And so I think that, this is a great moment of enlightenment and reset. because, you know, if you are somebody who compares, and I think it's natural that we compare to each other, but at the end of the day, you know, if that comparison doesn't lead you to inspiration, it leads you to tearing yourself down, or leads you to feeling inadequate, or feeling like I was talking about earlier, you know, broken. You know, I love what I wrote down here after hearing you talk, bouncing back from broken. I just, you know, really feel like we have to, single moms, single dads, and the kids, realize these things are important. They're very important. And we have to support each other in doing it.
And to your point, you know, Noelle, if we can establish these habits, when you find yourself in dire straits, when you're, you know, when you can't make ends meet that month, you know, you've already got that coping mechanism, that strategy built in. You can employ it when you need it. So it's really good to build that habit for sure.
Yeah. And the thing about, you know, the dire straits and kind of the emotional havoc that comes from those moments is that when you are, when you allow yourself, I call it going down the rabbit hole, right? So you have a bill comes in and you look at your checkbook and you don't have the money to pay it. Now you start spiraling, right? And now you're down the rabbit hole, right? Because you're like, oh my God, what will happen if they shut off the electricity? But I can't pay the bill, you know, and that now you're just going and you're gone. And when you get like that, you're like that. Remember that old Peanuts character, Pigpen, that a big dust cloud around his head wherever he went? And that's really what happens. So you work yourself into a frenzy. You're down the rabbit hole. You're putting out this whole field of, you know, panic and worry and just garbage. And then a solution couldn't even find you if it beat you over the head, because you're literally blocking that off. So it's like, people don't realize how detrimental it is to allow themselves to go down the rabbit hole, to get embroiled in the panic, because the truth of the matter is, if you get a bill and you don't have the money in your checkbook, tell me, what the hell good is it going to do you if you make yourself sick worrying about that for the next week? Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's not going to change. Instead, wouldn't it be better to start like saying affirmations, or coming up and thinking of like, maybe there's something I can sell on eBay, or maybe there's somebody's house I can clean, or maybe there's something I can do. You know, is there a side hustle way I can bring in the money, or can I call, you know, the utility company and make a plan? You know, any kind of a solution. You're much better off to be focused on that than you are staying up at night worrying about this bill that you can't pay, because all you're going to do is bring yourself more of that. And that's sort of the thing that people don't realize. They don't understand how much they're harming themselves by buying into whatever your mortal mind is telling you about whatever, about, because then it goes like, oh, I'm garbage. I can't even afford to support my kid. I'm worthless. You know, there's a whole, you know what I mean? There's like this whole string that comes from that one, like, oh, the checkbook balance doesn't support me paying the bill. That's just a small, tiny fact. And then most people will take that and make a whole long string of all this stuff that you know what I mean? Instead of like, oh, here's a fact. That's interesting. Okay, let me put that there. Now, what could I do about that? Let me see what there might be a solution, right? Like, let me just see, or let me just not panic, you know? So it's really, in my work with people, that these are the things that I stress the most. Like, don't catch yourself when you're reacting. You're not going to stop right away, but you can start to catch yourself. You can start to say, oh, no, I don't want more of that. So let me not give that all of my attention and energy. Let me just set that over there. Let me move on to something else. And another skill, to your point, Daryl, is do the next thing in front of you. When you're in a place where you don't know what to do, or you're panicking, or you're freaking out, if it's make a cup of coffee, then go do that. If it's put the load of laundry, and then go do that. Just do literally the next task in front of you. Focus on that, then the next, then the next, then the next. And before you know it, you know, you'll have elevated yourself to a better state.
Stacy has a
glass of
catchphrase for
water.
that.
Do the next thing right or the right thing next.
Exactly.
What I was saying is, sometimes just get a glass of water. Like there is nothing wrong with really hydrating,
Yep.
sometimes what I'll do is we're all on our own journey of self-growth and sustaining, I guess. And so what I did, this is y'all are gonna laugh, because I wasn't drinking my water, nor was I blinking or taking my 5-minute yogas or anything, because I'm so into right now just learning to be an entrepreneur and being, all the tasks like you were talking about, massive action. So I got this gallon of water. I can't even believe I'm talking about this. And I put it in the restroom that I go to in my home where I take a break. My responsibility to myself is to take 12 giant gulps of water every time I have to take a bio break. So
Nice.
I'm getting hydrated instead of going to the garage and getting another, Coke Zero or ignoring that need that I have. And I don't know, I think you can set little self-care pockets for yourself around the house. I'm learning I have to do that. Like I brought my yoga ball into my office. And so if I need to stretch and I'm too wound up, I just step away and sit on my yoga ball for a little bit, and it just changes things.
Yep.
Self-care traps for those of us who are hard to teach.
Right.
So I have a confession to make. I'm a more recent single parent than you guys. My kids are 7 and 5, and I've only been divorced a little less than 2 years. So for me, like when I ask these questions, I'm as much trying to just sponge everything that you guys are saying, because you've already been through the challenges that lie ahead for me. So and that's what we try to do with the show, is we try to be a resource to our viewers and our listeners. But I mean, you guys and your stories, and you are just as much a resource to me. So certainly thank you both.
Well, that was nice for you to say, Daryl.
Well,
I don't know what I'm doing
here. So, I'm still figuring it out one day at a time.
We didn't know either. We only know now because we already got through it. But in the middle, it very much looks like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And you just do the next thing in front of you, and before you know it, the kid is 7, then 8, then 12, then 15, then all of a sudden he's 18 and now he's going to be 20. And it's like, whoa, I did it. I remember when he got his learner's permit. So here in Vermont, it was at 16 and a half. And we were at the registry and, they came out with the card and they gave it to him. And I burst into tears. And I realized that I had my head down for 16 and a half years. I got to get the kid, you know what I'm saying? I got to make that kid okay. Like I came from crazy people to some extent, and I just need to make, my whole goal was to make sure that the kid had a stable environment and that he had everything he needed and that he wouldn't want for anything, because, we were really poor when I was growing up, and I was just like, I'm not, I don't want to sign up for that, man, not doing it. And I don't even know how, people go, oh my God, how do you have this? And how do you do that? And and I'm like, I don't know. Because in my mind, honestly, I'm still like that poor girl from where I grew up. It's funny. People see and perceive me in a particular way. And that is not how I perceive myself at all. It's I would give it all. I don't care. I know what it's like to have nothing. I've been there, done that several times in my lifetime. So it's whatever I appear to have, it means nothing to me. And I'm always giving things away, and people are like, oh my God. And it's like, you don't even know, man, you don't need all that. You know what I mean? It's nice to have it. It's cool. But I'm from Boston. I know how to get by on, macaroni and cheese in a box and Spam. I got this. So, but I remember crying, and he's like, Mom, what is wrong with you? And I was like, dude, you don't get it, but someday you'll get it, because it was like, oh my God, I can breathe. And that's how I felt. I felt like I could take a breath for the first time in 16 and a half years, because I had got him a car and now I'd be able to take himself places. And I was like, wow, okay, I can breathe. and that was just a weird, that was a weird feeling. And, then when he graduated, and then when he moved out, that was weird. He moved out last year, and I was okay. Like, I cried all the way home after and it was just weird because it's like, I remember thinking, who am I now? Like, my job was that. And that was, even though, I know I have a business and I have a brand and I have all, but that was my thing. And now, he, not like, we talk all the time and everything, and he actually works for my corporation now. So, but you know what I mean? It was like, who am I? Now
Sure.
I'm like,
Oh yeah, we identify as
I'm
parents
like
so
a
much.
grown up, and what do I want to do with my life? And I had to start asking myself the question, what do I want? And then I started talking about that on the air. I started saying, like, at the beginning of the year to people, like, you guys, I started asking myself this question, and it's an interesting question. So I'm going to put it out to you. What do you want? Because you know what? As single parents, we don't ever ask that question because it's never even about that. And that's when I came to see that asking that question and answering it as it is as important to you, Daryl, because you're in the middle of it, as it is important to Stacy and I being on the other side of it, because we don't ask ourselves that enough. And when we're in the middle of it, and honestly, if I had understood to ask myself that, like where you are, Daryl, right now, like there might have been different outcomes, right? Because a lot of what I ended up doing was just reacting to what needed to be done. And there was a lot of places where I didn't freely choose what I was doing. I just did whatever I needed to do to make sure that kid was taken care of. And in that, I didn't recognize sometimes my own power and my own worth. And, when I look back, I don't have any regrets, but like, if I knew now what, then, if I knew it then, I might have made some different, I may have made some different choices, and because I would have understood things a little bit differently. So I encourage you to ask yourself that question as your kids are growing up, and as you're sitting in the middle of being a single dad. Like, that's a really important question, because
Dare to dream, Daryl.
But I gotta be honest, not screwing them up is still at the top of the list.
Yeah, right. That's the top of the list for all of us, probably will be forever, right?
Right.
One of the things, Noelle, I wanted to ask you, because I love what you're talking about, and I kind of talked about this a little bit. It's something I've been opening up about. So my son left the house, I guess, in 2018. He left really before he graduated high school. It was a big deal for me. We had a big blow up. It was like, awful. And it was because I thought he was falling off a cliff. I thought he was headed down a bad road, and I was using all my tough love skills to hang on to him and get him back onto the road that we both had been going down, and as he kind of shifted tracks and, fell in love and went off and got married, and now he lives in Hawaii, and we get to text and everything, from that point when I saw us drifting apart to the part now where, okay, we're kind of getting back in touch, we're, healing. There was this period of time of constant grieving, deep grieving. And I haven't been able to really speak about it in a way that I feel like I could help somebody else going through something like that yet. But I know for sure there was a dynamic, having raised my son alone for 16 years. And all of a sudden, all of the, he was in musical theater, and he may still go and go to musical theater. That's not decided yet, but it felt like something was ending. But in the end, I was making it end because I wasn't accepting his new journey,
Well, and you're still his mom.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, I wondered, kind of like you said, I saw that single parenting had a lot of gaps in it. There were so many families, including myself, I wanted to see more for, especially for the children. And I wonder if you could speak to that dynamic of like for all of us that are, we're not losing our kids, but they're growing up and we're shooting them off like arrows into the world. And what is that dynamic where we just kind of have a death of sorts?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point where your son took a direction that wasn't your plan for him, like we had that here too. So I had a particular plan in mind for this kid, and he came to me halfway through 11th grade and said, I'm done. I don't want to be in this. He had gone to private school his whole life. And when my mom had a stroke and I moved us back to Vermont, I put him into public high school because I thought it would be a good experience for him, because he had been in, I thought he needed to just see like what the real world looks like. And I encouraged him to take all of his courses heavy, because I had a feeling like maybe he would get to a place where he didn't, really want to finish out. But I thought that would be like halfway through senior year, because that's what I did. But he got there halfway through junior year, and then he went to another program that helped him graduate early. So he actually ended up graduating as a junior, as halfway through junior year. So he missed, graduation, and he missed like all that cool stuff that like I thought I would live vicariously through him, because high school was really icky for me in a way. And I thought like, and I was like, I was really like, I
You
had
were
to
wronged. You were kind
I
of
had,
wronged.
I mean, I had to let it go. I had to support it, and I just had to let it be okay. And then, he wanted to move out, and where he chose to move to was this, and I just had to, I had to just understand that, yes, he is my son, but it's not my job to control him. And he's an adult and he has his own life, and it's my job now to be a support for him when he wants it. And it's, I will hold counsel when I'm asked. And of course I'm Italian, so I have an opinion, and sometimes I'm give it to him whether he asks me or not, especially when it comes to a girl. But that I think that we have to come to a place. So this is again, like, I don't know how many God people are out there, or just kind of a universal, like believing in something greater, a higher power, whatever you want to call it. But truthfully, if you have that kind of like faithfulness that, there is a divine plan, there's a bigger plan than us, there's something bigger holding us. I feel like that's easier to just say, okay, like everyone has their own karma, everyone has their own plan. It's not my job to tell you how to live your life, Stacy, or you, Daryl, how do you live your life. And it's not my job to tell my kid how to live his life. And so I just have to trust that it will work out. And, and it's hard because we have to watch them get knocked and learn their lessons. But, Stacy, we had to learn ours, right? And I can remember my mother telling me stuff and I didn't listen to her, and I got kicked around by the universe because I didn't listen. So I feel bad for people that don't believe in something greater, because I feel like at that point, it really is a terrible loss or a death or what, that's really scary if you think that there isn't like a higher plan. You know what I'm saying? Because at that point, I don't know what you count on when you release them and let them go. For me, it was a bit easier because I am a God girl, and I just did a lot of praying, and I still do. I pray for that kid every single day, and I just have to trust that God's got him, and that his karma is good enough that, whatever he's created. And I've taught him, and I see him enacting his own prayer practice and his own affirmation practice. And he's asking me what he should be reading, and he's asking me what he should be studying. So I feel fortunate that he picked all that up, because at no point in his 18 years did I sit him down and say, here's how you need to live your life, or here's what you need to do. And I watch him now do things, and I'm like, why are you like that? And he's like, look who my mother is. He's like, Mom, I literally watched you manage people, or I watched you do this, or I watched you pray every single day. I watched you live what you teach people. And that, so like whatever core principles you instilled in your son, you just have to trust that even if he's swayed by a girl or a marriage or a this or a that somewhere in there, the good work that you did for the time that he was with you, like that will eventually take hold, and you will eventually see, that circle back, and you will see him emulate those qualities. And I feel like that is kind of the only way to deal with that, right? Because when the kid goes off and does whatever, like, sometimes they're going to really mess up, and we just have to sit and watch. And, there were times where I just, cried and was like, but I just have to watch it, because it's not my job to tell him it's not my job to tell him what to do anymore,
Well,
and sometimes he'll even ask me, and I'm like, it isn't my job anymore. Because, I don't want that responsibility anymore, truthfully.
Well, I think too, just circling back, we ended up really getting some quality time before they moved away. And I got to reacquaint myself with his now wife, and it really, I think what you're saying about, leaning on our faith, trusting God and the universe with that which is precious to us, right? And that which is precious to us in the end is not control, it's that precious soul that we have come to adore, and fight for. So yeah, well, thank you for speaking to that. I still have not fully wrapped my head around that lesson. And so it really is something I wanted to hear your input on, especially given your background. And leaning on our faith is I ended up doing exactly that and prayed my way out of it, I'm proud to say, but it took some time. It took some time and some friends.
I feel that. Yeah, I get that. I feel that.
Yeah. And, also, friends who come alongside us and really remind us who we are when we get lost in grief or get lost in, like you were talking about earlier, fear, and having a community. I think what the community you've built and the work you have done has been incredible. And like I said, I'm so honored to know you and for you to hear from you.
Thank you. That's sweet. Well, I appreciate you having me.
So wrapping up, Noelle, if folks want to connect with you, you want to give us your social media handles, that sort of thing?
Sure. They can go to the easiest thing is for them to go to the workingsinglemom.com. And from there, all the social media icons are there, and they can find us everywhere. We're on Pinterest and LinkedIn and Tumblr and Instagram and Facebook and whatever else there might be out there. We're on there. We're everywhere.
And Stacey, I feel like we all should know this by now, but if we want to connect with Single Parent Advocate, how do we find you guys?
Oh, you just go to singleparentadvocate.org, and we have the podcast feed live now there, as well as all of our social handles. I will say, unlike Noelle, we're primarily on Facebook. That's really where you'll find us, is largely on Facebook or on the website and on the podcast.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you folks for joining us once again. This has been the Single Parent Advocate Podcast. I'm Carl Moody, joined by Stacey Puerto. She is the Single Parent Advocate. This week, our guest, Noelle. Thank you for Noelle, the single parent, or the singleworkingmom.com is where we'll find her. Well, Federico, thank you for joining us. And folks, we'll see you again next week.